Be me. 23, loud. Not polite. Angry in ways that aren't soft or poetic. Not the kind of feminist who says, we're all human deep down. No. I say things like, if men want peace, they can give up power. I don't believe in balance. I believe in reclaiming space. Fourth-year sociology student. My dissertation's literally titled Shared Silence, the Structural Exclusion of Women's Voices in Post-Crisis Male-Led Institutions. My advisor calls it aggressive. I call it honest. I'm not here to be likable. I'm here to be remembered. At our university, there's a building everyone calls the boys' room. Not officially, of course. But that's what it is. Economics, law, business, all housed in this echo chamber of suits and quiet smirks. The kind of place where girls go silent in the elevator. Where professors shake men's hands longer. The kind of place where I stopped going. Until last semester. There was a panel hosted by the Economics Society. Topic: The Future of Equity in the Global Labor Market. I went because the poster had 7 men's faces and 1 woman. I went because the only question we're allowed to ask these days is, will you be civil? And I'm done being civil. I sat in the front row. Notebook open, anger sharp. They started talking about wage gaps like they were weather reports. Casual. Distant. I waited. Then one of them, Sebastian, mid-30s, polished beard, UN internship energy, said, at a certain point, we also need to acknowledge that women tend to self-select out of high-pressure roles. I raised my hand. The moderator looked past me. Picked a guy in row 3. I raised my hand again. Higher. 5 questions later, they couldn't ignore me. I stood up before being called on. I'm sorry, I said, but your analysis implies that women are biologically allergic to power, rather than structurally locked out of it. You're not describing a pattern. You're just repeating a myth. The room went quiet. Not respectful quiet. That who let her in here kind of quiet. Sebastian smiled that practiced, glassy smile. I understand your passion, he said, but we have to be realistic about the data. There it was. That word. Realistic. Always code for return to silence. I smiled back. Reality is built by those who speak uninterrupted. They moved on. I stayed standing until I felt the moderator twitch. Then I sat. I left that panel shaking, not from fear, but from adrenaline. From knowing I wasn't just unwanted, I was unwelcome. A threat. Not because I was wrong, but because I was too much for their script. That night I posted a photo of the panel. Captioned it. When women speak, men call it aggression. When men interrupt, it's moderation. I didn't go to war, I walked into one already happening. Went viral on campus. Got me another podcast invite. But also, a DM from a guy I didn't recognize. You say you want equality, but you don't listen. You just attack. I stared at the message. Thought. When did listening become synonymous with silence? When did fighting for space mean I had to apologize for taking any? I didn't reply. Instead, I printed it. Taped it to my wall. Called it evidence. Because this isn't just about men not listening. It's about how every room they built was made to shrink us. And the second we take up space, they say we're the ones being loud. It's funny how the war doesn't end when you leave the room. It follows you. Into the cafe. Into your texts. Into the soft spaces that were supposed to be yours. I went on a date the week after the panel. Yes, the date. I know. But I'm not made of stone. I still like connection. Even if I don't believe in romance as liberation. His name was Ryan. Tall. Polite. Wrote decent messages. Quoted Zadie Smith in his bio. I was intrigued. We met at a small wine bar I suggested. I arrived early, picked the table farthest from the speakers, facing the door. Always face the door. Always be ready. He walked in with a canvas bag and nervous energy. Waved awkwardly. Sat across from me. Nice teeth. Disarming voice. Wore cologne like a man raised by a mother who told him subtlety was sexy. 5 minutes in, he asked about my podcast. I raised an eyebrow. You listened? He nodded. 2 episodes. The one about institutional gaslighting was intense. I sipped my drink. Waited. But he continued, don't you think sometimes you come off kind of angry? There it was. The lowercase dagger. Angry. The word that makes every woman sound irrational, every truth sound like a tantrum. I didn't flinch. I've practiced that. Would it feel better, I asked, if I cried instead? He blinked. No, I just meant like, you're obviously smart. I just think the tone might scare people off. I laughed. Short. Sharp. No warmth. I'm not trying to be approachable, I said. I'm trying to be accurate. The rest of the date was beige. Not bad. Not great. He asked if I wanted to see him again. I said, you want a woman who speaks softly about injustice. That's not me. He smiled like I was being dramatic. You're a lot. I smiled back. Thanks. I worked hard on that. I walked home with my keys in my fist like I always do. Not because I thought Ryan was a threat, but because you never really know. That's the thing no man really understands. Being a woman is like being in a low-grade war all the time. You keep your back straight. You double-check the exits. You memorize smiles and catalog tones. Not because you want to. Because you have to. At home, I scrolled through comments on my last post. Feminists act like victims and then bite your head off when you offer help. You'd get more people on your side if you weren't so hostile. You're exhausting. The word exhausting hit harder than I wanted it to. Not because it wasn't true, but because I was. I was tired of needing to be smarter, faster, more articulate, just to be taken half as seriously. Of curating anger to make it consumable. Of being the cool feminist in group chats and the intense one at dinner. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Thought about how much of my time is spent rehearsing what I say so I won't be called emotional. How many smiles I've offered as apology for being direct. My friend Lena texted. You good? You were kinda sharp on the pod. I stared at her message. Sharp. Another word for loud. Another word for you made me uncomfortable. I typed back. Maybe I don't want to be good. Maybe I'm done waiting for men to grow up. Maybe I'm done performing softness just to be heard. Then I deleted all of it. Replied with, yeah, just tired. Because sometimes war looks like fighting. And sometimes it looks like lying in bed, staring at the wall, silently choosing not to say what you mean, because saying it again would cost too much. And tonight? I had nothing left to spend. There's a kind of betrayal that doesn't come from men. It comes from women, the ones who smile while telling you to be more strategic. The ones who say, you're right, but you're not helping. The ones who whisper, don't post that. It makes us look bitter. I had a meeting with the Gender Equity Board. I'm on it. Was proud to be. We were planning a campus-wide campaign, Reclaim the Ratio. A response to the 1:6 male-to-female speaker imbalance at last semester's panels. I proposed something bold. 1 month. No male keynotes. All female panels. Every event. We flip the stage and we see who notices. Silence. Then Julia, a third-year political science major with perfect eyeliner and the voice of someone born to lead LinkedIn webinars, said, don't you think that's a little extreme? I said, do you think being the minority at every academic event for 3 years is extreme? She said, we're supposed to be building bridges. I said, I'm not here to build bridges. I'm here to burn the ones that only men get to walk across. More silence. After the meeting, one of the younger girls caught up to me. Whispered, I loved what you said. But maybe don't say it like that. Like that. I didn't ask what she meant. Because I knew. Too loud. Too cold. Too sharp. Again. That night, I walked past the law library. Groups of men inside. Confident voices echoing across the marble. Their space. Their rules. Their laughter spilling into the courtyard like smoke I couldn't breathe. I sat on a bench outside, watching them. Feeling like an observer in a play I didn't audition for. And suddenly, I was 17 again. At my first Model UN conference. One of 3 girls in the room. I had spent weeks prepping. Facts. Speeches. Strategy. I raised my hand to make a point and a boy from some prep school said, cute passion. You should go into PR. Everyone laughed. Even the moderator. That night, I cried in the hotel bathroom while my roommate told me, you just have to speak more like them. Like them. That phrase never left me. Because what no one tells you about being a strong woman is that everyone secretly wants you to be a little softer. Strong, but not angry. Confident, but not threatening. Smart, but not intimidating. Even other women, especially other women, they say they want power, but they want it in a palatable shade. Rose rage. Digestible fire. Not this. Not what I am. I posted a clip from our board meeting to my story. No caption. Just the silence after I said my piece. It spread. A few hours later, I got a DM from an unknown account. Maybe if you weren't so angry, people would listen. Another. It's always the loud ones who get in the way of progress. And then one that felt like a bullet in slow motion. You make feminism harder for the rest of us. I didn't cry. I just closed my phone, lay down on the floor, and stared at the ceiling. What they don't tell you about leading is that sometimes it just means standing still while everyone quietly walks away from you. I thought I was fighting men. But now I was fighting the idea of being too much. Too much for them. Too much for my own team. Too much for the room. I thought the rules were ours. But maybe we just learned to play theirs better. And now that I refuse to play at all, maybe they didn't want me either. I didn't quit the board. I didn't apologize. I didn't rephrase my statement in a more collaborative tone. I showed up at the next meeting wearing my favorite shirt, black, bold white text across the chest. Patriarchy is not a communication issue. They didn't laugh. Julia brought slides. Neutral colors. Soft edges. Language like productive dialogue, inclusive pathways, male engagement strategy. I let her speak. Then I raised my hand. I think we're forgetting something, I said. The system we're trying to navigate wasn't built for us to win. It was built to train us to wait. To wait our turn. To wait for change. To wait for permission to be loud. And we've been waiting our whole lives. Silence. I'm done waiting. Nobody clapped. They never do. I walked home that night with no music in my ears. Just the sound of my own boots hitting pavement like punctuation. I passed a group of guys sitting on the stairs outside the dorms. One of them looked up, saw me, said something under his breath. They laughed. I didn't turn. Didn't flinch. Didn't slow down. Because here's what no one tells you about being a woman who doesn't shrink. You're not scared anymore. But you're always tired. Tired of being read as danger when you're just being direct. Tired of being asked to make power sound like an invitation. Tired of whispering truth and being told to turn it into a campaign. I opened my phone later that night and saw I'd lost 50 followers. Gained 72. One DM said, I used to think feminists were just angry for no reason. Now I think maybe you're angry because you're the only one paying attention. Another said, I didn't know we were allowed to speak like this. That one made me cry. Not because I felt seen, but because it proved the silence had worked. It had taught us to doubt our own volume. To dress pain in softness. To wait until we were less scary to be believed. What if I didn't do that anymore? What if I kept the fire? What if I stopped apologizing for saying things plainly? What if I let go of being understood and started focusing on being heard? Because the truth is, I don't want balance. I don't want harmony. I want justice. And justice doesn't whisper. It doesn't hold hands with the people who built the system. It burns it. So no, I don't trust men. I don't trust institutions. I don't trust the idea that we should work together with people who only value us when we're useful to their comfort. But I do trust my rage. I trust its shape, its stamina, its intelligence. I trust that the girls watching me are learning. Learning that power doesn't always look like peace. Sometimes it looks like a woman who didn't wait her turn. And never will.